order. This is the regular meeting of the City Council on January 27th, 2014. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edgar.
Here.
Councilmember Gross.
Here.
I apologize, roll call's wrong. Councilmember Kusamoto.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Here.
And Mayor Graham Mejia.
Here. I'd like to go ahead and open oral communications. Anyone choosing to speak on any of the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council, remarks are to be made limited not more than 5 minutes per speaker. And I have a couple of cards.
Those are for the other items.
Yes, I just wanted to let them know if they would like to, for those of you who turned in cards, you're welcome to speak at oral communications if you would like to, as opposed to at the agenda item. If not, you're welcome to speak at that time. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close oral communication. Oh, okay.
I was lazy and didn't fill out a
Please.
card. My apologies.
That's okay. State your name for the record, please.
Dave Emerson, Los Al resident for over a quarter of a century. I wanted to take advantage of the time, just Councilmember Murphy in his council comments at the end of the last meeting talked about priorities for the city, and I think you're going to have a workshop moving forward on that, but I noticed you're also having a evaluation for our new city manager, and I suspect that may have more to do with goal settings than evaluating his last 6 weeks in the job. But I hope I hope that's positive, though, whichever it is. But that does present us an opportunity. And in fact, before I talk about 2014, I just want to say 2013, I think, was a banner year for all 5 of you. I think the council worked together, addressed a lot of issues, unanimously hired both interim and new city manager and city attorney, unanimously appointed mayor and mayor pro tem twice, in fact 3 times for mayor pro tem, but you know, I don't think one of those, I don't know how that turned out, but I just, I don't know, I would think all of you must feel good. It seems like it's got to be easier to serve on the council this year, other than having the 2 major hires you had to do, and it just, I would think it's more fun, and it's more fun to watch and less stressful, and I think you guys are setting an example for the community. You're 5 individuals who obviously have what's best for the community at heart, and you try to work together to accomplish that, and it's been fun to watch, and I think that gives you a good platform to build on moving forward, combined with the excellent new city attorney and city manager. In fact, there's some opportunities when someone comes in, before he gets used to the way things go, he can pick up things, and I hope you take advantage of that, they'll have things to contribute. In terms of priorities, you know, we all know that if you do a survey, crime or police or safety is almost always #1 in our community. They like it, they wish it was better, but people live here because it's safe. Businesses move here because it's safe. I have a friend, Lee Crane of L&C Coins, who moved here from Long Beach because of our police department. So we attract business with that, and that's important. And obviously we want to keep building in that area. The other thing is traffic that comes up all the time, and I think we're making progress, but it's something to always have in the back of your heads. And the other thing, when I talk to people, and I think on your surveys too, it comes out different ways, but basically fiscal responsibility. And that's the budget. And I want to talk about that briefly, and then about a few elephants in the room that hopefully we can make progress on this year. Really, 1-year goals are partly just making progress toward 5-year goals. It's what you can get accomplished in 5 years that's really significant. In terms of the budget, a couple of things. One is efficiency, areas where I see room for improvement, modernization, using technology to reduce workload. I shouldn't have to call City Hall when my street light needs to be replaced. There should be something on the website for that. That's a fairly routine request. I shouldn't have to call City Hall for other things. You've made a lot of strides. Last year's website revamp was a huge leap forward, but that's going to continue. More and more people want their information through their phone, through their smartphone. And at some point there's probably city apps that are available. Some may be something free and a trade-off for advertising or something like that. But I think those can save money if we do it the smart way. It's not going to address everyone. Email. as a commissioner. I'd rather get my commission stuff via email than snail mail. And that saves you some postage, and there's a time speed up on that, too. Some people prefer it the other way, but those of us that would rather, I think there's technology is going to continue offering lots of opportunities to do things smarter and faster and better. And I think that's something that we can take more strides to this year. The second thing, and as far as efficiency in the budget, I just think any person coming in new can say, gee, why do you do it this way? How come we got this? And I think that Mr. Plumlee will no doubt already has seen some things that he thinks could be more efficient, and I think we want to encourage him, even though some stuff he may not have the history, but I think that's good. The other budget thing is increasing money coming in. In particular, I think we used to get an awful lot of grants, and I know those are cut back, but I think a little bit of funding for some staff assistants or other assistants part-time could multiply the money invested for grants if we were smart about that. The four elephants, quickly, because I'm out of time already. Unfunded liabilities, specifically pensions, developing the remaining open space, and mansionization. Can I have 2 more minutes?
Is that okay with everyone? We only have a couple of speakers. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I think mansionization and the base are critical, should have been done a few years ago, but as we move into a recovery, God willing, hopefully, sluggish as it might be, there will be more and more pressure in those fronts. And the base in particular, in fact, we already, the other item on the agenda relates to development. 3 years ago, we wouldn't have that project. 4 years from now, we'll probably have 7 of them because there's such a demand. So in terms of our neighborhoods, I think having the Planning Commission look at, or Stephen, who has so much time on his hands, look at things that can avoid mansionization if that's really what the community wants. And I think that's what most residents want. There's an awful lot of examples. In fact, our Highlands guy wrote a column on that recently. The base, again, at some point, if it gets bracked, it's too late. We need to say, gee, we want parkland here, we want retail here. And I don't know if there's enough money. I know some of that's in the general plan, but that wasn't a whole rewrite, but something so we've got something already there before the pressure arises. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go.
May I just congratulate Mr. Emerson on his chairmanship?
Oh,
And thank him for his service.
yes, absolutely.
I couldn't have done it without you folks taking a risk of putting me on the board.
Well, you're doing a great job. I hear good things about you, so thanks for your service, Dave, and being involved. Okay.
Jerry, just one clarification I think is really important. You asked Mr. Emerson almost in a rhetorical way whether the evaluation, what is it? And just so we're clear with the community, it's a contractual requirement that we signed up to with Mr. Plumlee within 45 days of his hiring to actually agree on what his goals would be. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. Yeah.
He figured that.
Speculating, so that confirms.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Now, this is us trying to help him do a great job like he's going to this year.
Thank you for clarifying that. Well, yeah, no, I've heard nothing negative, everything positive.
Cool.
All right, let's move this along. Okay, let's move on to we'll go ahead and close oral communications. Thank you, Warren. And move on to item 4A. Can we get a brief staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The Community Development Director, Stephen Mendoza, will do the staff report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Highland Point and Partners has filed an application with the city's Community Development Department for a general plan amendment, zone ordinance amendments, site plan review, and a specific plan, along with all necessary environmental work for processing of the vacant 2.1-acre site at 10650 Los Alamitos Boulevard. To facilitate the application, the city is required to hire the necessary CEQA consultants to provide an analysis on the traffic-related impacts, the other environmental impacts related to noise, air, everything related to CEQA, and present that document to the Planning Commission and the City Council at a later date. Additionally, because of limited planning staff, the applicant is requesting that the city hire a consultant to supplement the staff to facilitate the application in a timely manner. Staff has done this once before on behalf of a developer. We did it with the Olson Company, and the Olson Company is willing to fund their consultant in order to facilitate the application and do all the staff work. The consultant still operates under the direction of myself and works closely with our city planner, Tom Oliver, in ushering the application through. All of these services are provided regardless of the outcome of the application, and they're provided and funded by the applicant. Tonight's agreement with the city council, if approved, provides a deposit in the amount of the full amount of those two consultants, plus a little extra, $5,000 for any legal work and $5,000 for any engineering work, and that ensures that taxpayer money is not used to facilitate an application, and that the applicant is carrying their own weight in costs related to their application. The city attorney has approved this form of the agreement, and it'll allow the consultants to begin their work, and it's expected to be completed spring or summer of 2014, and then we'll proceed to the Planning Commission and then to the City Council. It may take a stop at the Traffic Commission as well to look at the traffic-related issues. With that, again, staff is recommending that the council accept this deposit and then allow the city manager to finalize the professional services agreement with these two consulting firms for this application.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council. Just a point of clarification for the council, because I wasn't sure how in-depth we were going to be going into this tonight. So, Carrie, will you clarify for us exactly what's being discussed so that we don't go beyond the scope of what this item is?
Sure. The application itself is not before you at all. The merits or demerits of the application are not to be considered or discussed or prejudged or anything like that. However, in order to get to that step, you need consultants. This is a big project. You need to have environmental consultants. These are things that staff is probably not capable of doing because it takes expertise that we don't have here, not to mention time. You know, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and staff is already pretty booked up. They still will have functions and roles in this, which they're happy to do. But as you can see just by the amount of the deposits, this is something beyond the capacity of current staff to do. They are deposits. Just because they're paid doesn't mean that they'll all be used. You know, hopefully not much of it will be used as far as the attorney's fees and that. But if it's not all used, we don't get to keep it. We return it to the applicant. So this really seems like a really good result for the community, for the city, and for the applicant, who's, you know, more than willing to enter into the agreement, knowing that it doesn't assure approval of the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. And this is not anything new. We did this with the Olson project, and it was a way to expedite it more quickly. So what I'd like to do is ask the council if they have any questions, or would you prefer to have Mr. Levinson come up, give his brief presentation, allow the oral communications, then bring it back, or would you prefer to ask questions now before he speaks?
You know, I think there's clarity from my perspective that this is not a public hearing. It's not on the merits of the project. And I appreciate that the applicant has provided some additional information to us. I think at the last meeting we went through this and you opted to pull it so that Mr. Edgar could weigh in. That being said, if Councilman Edgar has some questions on it, we should entertain that. Otherwise, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, well, we're still going to open it up for oral comment. So if the council would like to ask any questions now, I'm happy to entertain that. If not, we'll go ahead and allow the speakers to come forward. Troy, you weren't here. We were. How would you prefer to handle it?
Mayor, if possible, I would just like to ask just a really couple quick questions just to make sure
Great.
I'm up to speed.
Okay.
I did do a little bit of a discussion earlier today with the city manager to make sure. I guess Carrie or or the city manager. One of the questions I had is that, a vote tonight is, a yes vote just says we accept the deposit, and again, not on the merits of the project, but the project now has consultants and everything that's required funded. A no vote, or if it fails, what does it cost the city if, some of this stuff is done? I know our fee structure, when we have new projects like this come up, a lot of it is fixed amounts for certain things that are required to go through this process. Others are discretionary or subjective, and they have a consultants required. The city attorney made a comment that, you guys are pretty booked up, so that means the excess capacity has to be picked up. So a no vote costs the city how much?
A no vote means we don't have authority to hire the consultants to do the work. Anything over $10,000 requires action of the city council, so either of these consultants would not be part of the picture, and staff would have to carry the entire load of the work. And we don't have the professional capacity of writing a full-blown EIR or a mitigated negative deck, studying all the environmental impacts for this project.
So does that mean that you would then have to hire and augment through Wildan or whoever our firm is to get this type of help to facilitate through the process regardless?
We would like to do so, but we don't have authority to do so without council approval.
Okay, so a no vote doesn't give you approval, it just says no to these consultants.
It doesn't give us authorization, it doesn't give the city manager authorization to sign those professional service agreements that are in the packet.
So if we reject this recommendation tonight, in some time unspecified in the future, you guys would come back with a package of potential consultants you need to finish reviewing this application to get it ready for the Planning Commission, and it would be with a financial request of money, or it would say it's going to take a year because you guys just can't do it in a amount of time, right? It's either one or the other. I'm just trying to get to the cost.
Absolutely. The cost is that staff would be diverted to that project, and staff would be diverted from its regular work. That's the labor cost.
Okay.
The other issue is eventually we'd hit a wall with an environmental document and
Right.
probably come back to the city council asking for the proper consultants to finish that environmental document.
Okay, so this pays for those costs on the developer's dime. A no says we basically used our internal resources and we'll have a bill to be specified for niche specialty help that we can't do in-house.
Correct.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. We'll go ahead and open oral communications. And could we have Steve Levinson come first, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Steve Levinson with Highland Point Partners, the applicant. I basically just wanted to let everybody know that I was here and in the audience and available to answer any questions that you may have with regard to the reimbursement agreement. As just discussed, we look forward to moving the process forward so we can adequately, at the proper time, present the project itself to the Planning Commission, to you, to the community, so everybody can understand what we're doing and the benefits that we believe that we're bringing to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next card we have is for Ray LeComte.
Thank you very much. I own the Arbor Village right across the street, and so initially my feeling was to reject this idea and let the applicant, go through the regular process as the rest of us, business people, etc., have had to do. But I'm getting the feel that this is solely a money agreement for them to pay for. So I can expect the next thing will be they got the general plan approval. I mean, it fits in all of the various aspects of planning. And the Planning Commission will get this project. Is that the way I get some yeses from somebody or what?
Stephen, why don't you go ahead and comment? For
Sure.
Ray LeComte?
If I could paraphrase Section 7 of the agreement, developer acknowledged that its payments and deposits described herein do not mean that the city will approve the project.
That's good enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We have someone new that came in. We are in the oral communications for item 4A. I'm just letting her know because she came specifically for this item. So we'll go ahead and entertain other people to speak. Thank you, Dave.
So Steve, council, make sure, two concerns. One is, as you said, this is a huge project, and Steve is overworked already. In fact, our staff, I think we're squeezing blood from a rock sometimes with all the work we get out of them, and the last thing they need is a 133-unit major project sapping their time and effort, and especially one that eventually might get rejected anyway. We certainly want to be fair to the project. We don't want to prejudice it. By the same token, we don't want that sappy time and energy that really might be better spent. And so, Steve, how much, well, you guys can ask Steve if you want to, but my concern is there's a lot, not just the cost of the EIR people, but the cost of our staff time, the facilities cost, there's just a utility cost, or we're adding staff. I mean, because frankly, this is a controversial project. What I've put up on the blog has been pretty much unanimously, the response has been unanimously negative. My analogy is to what the Prologus people did with their project. And before they got very far, they held community open houses, they had people come out, they spent a lot of time introducing the project to the community before even the EIR scoping. Now, this is a little different because it's not an EIR, but still, they got enough of a feel that they decided they didn't want to move forward. And it might be worth the developer's time to spend some time not trying to change the community's mind, but getting a real sense of where our community's feelings are on a project like that, as Mr. LeCompte said. That's not your position, I guess, but let's make sure that we aren't wasting staff time and money, because these guys are plenty busy enough, and I think there's other high priorities.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak regarding this item?
Good evening, Mayor Mejia and Council. Jody Schloss. I came tonight also I thought that it was going to be something a little bit different, but now that I found out that they want to spend money, I know this would be sort of a job security, and goodness knows people need work to do and jobs, but somehow I'm kind of torn about it, though, because I just feel like, the people I've talked to in the community, no one is in favor of this project, and even if it was made a little bit differently through some of the work that some of the consultants would do, I just think it's kind of a shame to, throw money away, no matter whose money it is. So, this could go either way. I don't know. I am not in favor of this project at all. And I have this thought once in a while about city council people. And this is nothing negative and nothing insulting to anyone up there, but sometimes I wish that city council members were required to have one term on the planning commission before you could actually run for city council, because you learn so much from being on a planning commission. And you can read a project like this, and you can just see all the little avenues and the tributaries of problems further down the line that would make it not a good project for your community. So I am against it, and I just would like to say, even as far as the pollution part of it, I understand that it has been mitigated, or some of it has been mitigated, but does pollution ever really go away? I mean, it ebbs and flows sometimes. So you could ask, there's a lady from Cyprus that you could ask if she spoke to her city council and said, she lives in the Sorrentos, and she said, why are there so many people getting cancer, in my neighborhood? Well, maybe it was because there was a tank farm underneath the Sorrentos at one time, and they cleaned it up. But, who knows? I just think that the area, something does need to happen with it. Everybody agrees that it's a blight. Nobody likes that dirt field. Nobody likes the fence with the plastic that just is ripped and falling off. Signs, sometimes there's signs and they have to be taken down. No one likes that. yes, there needs to be something done there. And I actually would hope that our city council would take it into consideration to possibly in the future have some kind of a fund to maybe buy land, that we don't have any open space in Los Alamitos, so we could have open space and possibly put a park there. Maybe not a park for children with swings, but maybe a place where people could gather to eat lunch, maybe a little amphitheater or something like that. But I don't like it the way it is now, and I think this is a very nice project, just not for Los Alamitos. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item, please come forward. If you will, state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Karen Joseph. I live in College Park North. I didn't really come prepared with any kind of statement. I just noticed a couple blurbs in the paper recently about this project and thought, what are they thinking? With the traffic already on Los Al, with the high school right there, if you drive around there anytime between 2:30 and say 6, it's crazy. I understand our zoning would have to be changed. If we ever try to do some kind of downtown area, I don't know that an apartment building would fit with that overall goal. I honestly would rather have the ugly dirt lot with the chain link fence than a big old apartment house. So I just want to go on record as saying that.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Anyone else like to speak on this item? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the oral communications part and bring it back to the council. Does anyone?
So, yeah, we didn't really, Troy, just for your edification, we didn't really go into any discussion last week on this. It was pulled, and I actually pulled it, and I did want to have some questions, so appreciate your questions there, and Mayor, appreciate the time to talk here. So, to City Manager on this, and I know there was a parallel drawn between this one and the Olson Home project, and I think Councilmember Edgar had kind of went down the path of, if we didn't accept the money from Olson Homes or from Highland Point Partners, the burden would be on staff to handle this. And as a speaker had said, one of the public speakers said, the one thought is to let it kind of go through its natural progression, which, as Councilmember Edgar points out, one exchanges time for money. So in some ways, the applicant is buying time by throwing money at it, which is kind of admirable. But we don't have to accept this. We could just go through the normal course, if I understand it, right? And it takes as long as it takes, and right. Yeah, you don't have to accept it. This just allows a vehicle to be able to have the developer pay for the studies and the analysis instead of having either staff do it or coming back with another consultant.
For appropriations, yeah, or whatever. But if a homeowner wanted to do something to some extent, they would have to go out and hire an architect and do all the, secure all the permits and studies and what have you as well, right? And those are kind of the choices there. Okay. The thing about this, and just out of full disclosure, I did meet with Mr. Levinson some time ago, and I think it was back in the fall. Does that sound about right? Yeah, so summer, that long ago. So I did have a preview of this. So I did have some contact with the developer and the applicant. So I just wanted to have that disclosure. So on this one, to me, my kind of reaction on this, on the one hand, I kind of like that something's being done with the property, the vacant lot, but on the other hand, I don't really feel that that this body should be the one that looks at it initially. And I will make a motion after some of the discussion. I would like to have that privilege of making a motion if someone else doesn't want to jump in, but I'll let the discussion kind of continue on. But I would like to see a little bit more vetting out of this before we take someone's money, spend it, go hire consultants, and it may be, as another public speaker had talked about, like the issue that happened down in our neighboring city with a 33-acre development that was just really not in fitting with the neighborhood and the region. So I think that we ought to, kind of go down that path, a little more due diligence on our part, and I know as staff had said, this doesn't utilize taxpayer dollars, but in a way it should, but it just takes time, and then it takes a little bit more of the perhaps having to go outside. So I'm interested in this, but I would want to see it have one more checkpoint before we decide on taking the money, and but I'll just hold off before I make a motion and let back to you, and like to have one more chance if it
Sure.
comes back.
Sure. Anyone else? Okay, I have some comments that I would like to address. I, too, understand that, with the Prologis issue, there was a awakening of the community because there was a meeting explaining what the project was going to be. And I don't think that if that process had happened, then that might have been a trucking terminal, which would have been really, really bad for this community, especially considering they were talking about 300 trucks a day that were the big rigs and then 2 small trucks for each of those. And obviously, that's an estimation, but that's not something we have to look at anymore because we gave the community the right to weigh in. And I think that because we've had people come forward, not just here tonight, but have also called us on the phone, well, for myself anyways, to say that they're concerned about the project. I don't know that they're actually opposed to it, but they would like to know a little bit more about it before it becomes fast-tracked. And that's really what we call this, is when we take the money for the city to do it, it moves the project on a little bit faster. So I would be supportive of taking it to the Planning Commission, but if we do not go that way tonight, there are a couple of things that I would hope that the council would take into consideration. And I just brought my agenda from last week because that's where all my notes were, and I didn't want to go through it twice. And if you look on page 14, and it's at the very end, let me see what it's under. Scope of work, Exhibit A. On page 14, the second, I would say it's about the third paragraph down. It's under Task 2, Environmental Documents. Under 2.1, it talks about, it includes Phase 1 Environmental. And I spoke with the city manager, and he verified for me that what that is instead of doing soil samples, because in the past there has been some contamination on the project, or I'm sorry, on the property, they would just go with any documents that had been prepared prior to this. So if we move forward, if we choose to support this tonight, I would like to ask that the council weigh in on whether or not they believe that soil samples should be taken. I don't know that the documentations that we have right now are something I feel comfortable moving forward with if you're going to be putting people living in that property and potentially exposed to some kind of harm.
Ms. Mayor, if I could just have the Community Development Director talk about what is in that scope, and that section on the environmental and
Okay,
any
great.
additional feedback.
That's a scope for the consultant. That excludes what the applicant's doing for himself. The applicant had a quasi-closure letter from the Water Board about the contamination of the soil. He took upon himself to go another layer and reopen what they call reopen that closure letter with the county water board. And he is now subject to a new level of review of which he is doing soil samples. And I'd bring him up, allow him the opportunity to tell you the level and the amount of money he has spent looking and analyzing the current soil issue.
Great, and I appreciate that because he did actually send either an email or a text to me with that information. But for the benefit of the community, if you could, and let me, I'll tell you what, why don't you let me finish the one last thing that I have, and then we'll have you come forward. And then the second and last item that I had, it talks about, under Task 3 on the same page, 2 public hearings. I think that the young lady that came forward tonight from College Park North talked about the traffic, and I think that it is essential before we have this project move forward one way or the other, we need to do our proper due diligence, send it to the Planning Commission, send it to the Traffic Commission, as we do all of the others, to make sure that those things are vetted out. They do a lot of work for us that we, greatly appreciate. So if we decide to move forward, I would like to have those things included in on our decision tonight, if it meets with the support of the council. And I'll go ahead and bring it back. No one else has any questions? Troy, how about you?
May I just ask a couple clarifications, and to Warren, also to your point, the projects follow a standard application process that does end up in the Planning Commission first. Was your point that the request for the payment is at the wrong part first?
Let me form a motion,
Sure.
so if you're done, I'll form a motion.
Well, I've got 2 questions. I just wasn't sure if it was your point that you're trying to get this to go for the Planning Commission to, or is it, will I find out in the motion?
You'll find out in the motion.
Okay, go for it then.
Okay, so, all right, so the motion I'd like to offer up is that we send this to the Planning Commission before accepting the offer, the deposits, or not, or spending any of the deposits, to get some, to provide the applicant an opportunity to speak to the Planning Commission, to get some feedback, and then to kind of decide if he wants to kind of press on, seeing how they might, provide feedback. And again, it's not to say no to the offer or to the deposit or hiring the consultants. Is just do that due diligence because, I think like the mayor said, if this happened in the Prologis where they had gone forward, to the, I guess, the neighboring region and the neighbors, they might have had enough feedback to say this project wasn't going to fly and had a different, business plan instead of sinking a lot of money into it. I'd like to offer the applicant the same opportunity that, wasn't offered there and give them a chance. And the Planning Commission would be the one that I'd like to see just get this, provide some feedback to them, and then bring it back here for, for us. And we're only talking like, another 3 weeks or so, I think it is. So my motion, long motion is we send this to the Planning Commission, have them take a look at this and come back, provide feedback to the applicant, and then just bring it back here to the council on the 18th, I think, or next meeting. Would be my motion.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and second that for purposes of discussion.
So let me then, now that I have that, I don't believe that's legal. I mean, there's a process that we, can we be subjective and kind of redivert, or, I mean, doesn't our ordinance cover the way, and state law covers the way these things have to be adjudicated? I'm not against trying to be creative, because I think what I hear here is like this, hey, we need to try and help them maybe not make a bad decision. Right. I get it, but I don't know legally if we can do that.
I mean, the state law requires that the Planning Commission evaluate, and the Planning Commission can't evaluate without a full report.
Okay.
Can't get a full report without spending the money one way or the other, so not really.
I'm sorry, not really.
Can't really do it that way.
Okay.
What, to have them to look at the application?
Right.
Because when you say it's, and appreciate the comments, Councilmember Egger, but City Attorney, can you explain it a little more in depth? Again,
That's not, sure.
I mean, so much like you had explained to the mayor, right, and to the council, that we're not deciding on the merits of the project, we're deciding whether or not to accept the deposit and then move forward, make the hire. So if my motion is saying, send it to the Planning Commission, have them listen to the applicant, and then, let's say, at that point, whether it comes back here without a decision from the Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission, I mean, they're entitled to go to any Planning Commission meeting, just like they're entitled to come here and to express their views or to present a project. I mean, they can say, this is what we're proposing, these are the lovely pictures, but the Planning Commission can't give them any feedback because it's not before them yet. It has to be a noticed public hearing with staff reports and staff and investigation and review. So it's not really possible to do it that way.
Thank you.
All right, Dean?
I'm sorry that we're debating something that, to me, isn't really, in my mind, debatable. And that is, we're comparing this to Prologis. Prologis was done in a different city. How they took that step, I don't know. You're asking the Planning Commission to look at something that is incomplete. There's not enough detail. There's not enough information. There's a concept and an idea. I also met with the developer, just as I think he did with everybody on the council. The question was raised, what do I think about it? And my response at that particular time is, I'm excited to see something happen on that property, but I don't know that this is the project. My understanding at that time was 50% of this project was to be one-bedroom apartments. Will that fly in this city? And I said, where are you going to get occupants for one-bedroom apartments? And the response was the hospital. Well, the developer applicant has a vision. And until that vision comes back in the form of an actual application project that says that, I don't know that anybody can make a decision. And from my perspective, I don't want to see public funds used on this, and I can't make a decision on this one way or the other until we have a whole package, and we can't get a whole package until it follows through the process being submitted to the city, vetted in that particular process, goes to the Planning Commission, and then ultimately comes to us. I think, there's been 2 people, 3 people in the audience that have made comment about they're not really in favor of the project. But what's the project? All you know is what you've heard. And that's kind of the same thing that happened with the Prologis thing. It was heard that it was going to be a truck terminal, and it was heard that it was going to be an Amazon depot. None of that was ever thought about from the standpoint of the applicant. We're too soon at this particular point to be trying to weigh the merits of this project, in my mind, as one member of this council, until we have the whole package before us. And this whole thing could change dramatically. I know there's an interest in wanting business and commercial, and there's been an attempt to add business and commercial on the bottom floor based on the renderings that we've seen. The applicant did provide us with some basic information that talked about the benefits that he saw coming to the city, but those haven't been vetted out either. Those are his interpretation at this particular point. And so I think the decision before us tonight is, do we try and make a decision on the project and push it through other methods, which city attorney says we can't do, or do we accept his offer of $94,000 to study it? When this came before us at the last meeting, I read very carefully through every piece of the documents that were provided to us, which are still available and still on the website, and it was clear throughout, there's no guarantee, cannot be a guarantee. So he's taking a gamble, and I would caution him here tonight. You've already heard a certain portion of the community that's saying, without even knowing what you're planning to do, they're against it. That's not what we get charged to do up here. We have to make the best decision in the interest of the community and the taxpayers. And until we have that whole package laid out, we're not going to be in a position to make that decision. So I would like to introduce a motion to say we accept staff recommendation and ask that the matter be brought back once it's completed through the normal process until we get a chance to do that. And part of it, I'm sure, will include some scoping meetings with the community where everyone in the community, neighbors, there's going to be trucks, lots of trucks, going up and down Brigham and Way. It already is. That's the route that's used for Gemini Forest Products, directly across. There's trucks that go to Ganal Lumber that way. You and I talked about the volume of cars parked on the streets right now from the high school kids. And so there's a whole lot of mitigation that's going to have to be viewed somewhere in this process. I don't think we up here on the dais want 150 units built with people calling daily saying there's trucks out there at 7 o'clock in the morning going beep, 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 beep. That's reality. That's the way it is right now. And that's what you're going to find out, I think, in the process of your traffic studies, the process of everything that has to go on from the standpoint of CEQA. And then at that particular point, you can make the decisions whether you want to follow through with this project or not. So my motion is to approve a staff recommendation, accept the $94,000, and get the study done. And that's not for the benefit of everybody up here fast-tracking. That's just simply saying we're not going to use taxpayer money, as Mr. Mendoza said earlier, to review this project to get it to us. And I don't want to take that chance. I'm sorry.
I think that would be a substitute motion. Is that not correct, Wendy? Warren already
Well,
made a motion and a second.
But perhaps, I can withdraw the motion that I
Okay.
made, and then I just want to have it go on the record, that was a motion, but it was withdrawn.
Okay. Richard would like to comment. Why don't we go ahead and give him an opportunity before
I'd
we
like
look
to see
for
if you've
us.
got a second to the
I
motion.
will second Dean's
Okay.
motion. I think that, Warren, I think you had a great solution. I wish it had been legal. To give the developer a chance to get some feedback without spending a ton of money I've been trying to think of one all week, and you actually had a good one, but it just doesn't work here. In my mind, the developer is a professional. He knows the risks. He's spoken to all of us. He's heard the community, and if he's ready to go ahead, you know, he deserves his chance. Many times, somebody has a vision, other people don't see it at first, and I know I'm the worst for that, so I would second and go ahead.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Dean, would you be willing to include this going before the Traffic Commission? And that way, maybe I could support it.
Madam Mayor, that's not on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so when would we address that, Carrie? Just because we've had several people.
It's going to
I
be
know
a
you
while
don't get the
before it
calls.
goes to the
Okay.
Planning Commission. You can put it on the next agenda.
All right.
Staff will probably do it anyway, having heard you say that, so you probably don't need to
I just want to make sure,
agendize
because
it.
it talks about it coming before us for a public hearing and the Planning Commission, but not the Traffic
Yeah.
Commission. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're...
Stephen, would this come before the Traffic Commission as well?
It's not required, but Tom and I have already discussed of the benefits of taking the traffic study when it's complete to the Traffic Commission for just to receive and file early. Because the traffic studies he's already paying for and doing on his own. So we see the benefits of doing that fairly early on.
Okay, great. So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Jerry, can I just, one last
Sure, Troy.
comment? I'm sorry.
One more go.
You know, the message I would send to the community is I think that, you know, we're probably sending a very strong indirect message to the developer. And in fairness, our job up here, just to clarify a little bit more, is we facilitate a process. And that process, we need to, you know, I think you have people up here that really care and don't want to see people throw bad money. But I would also say I met with the developer, as did the rest of the council, and I watched multiple iterations come based on feedback. And I think if the community addresses, this is a developer that wants to spend money in our community to do something, and the community feels that they can actually create a project with this developer, try to keep an open mind and work with him. There's going to be a business case on the developer side where they're going to come back and say, this is not negotiable, it's apartments. Maybe that's what happens. Or they say, you know, look, I'll go judo style with you and we'll see how far can we go that way or what other way. But I think if we want to have a fighting chance, the guy's going to spend 90 grand. You know, I think we've sent a really strong indirect message. I think the community ought to get behind the process and help the business case and see what can you get somebody that's actually got money that wants to spend it here, and can they make a project. I want to thank, you know, Mr. LeComte and the Pollards that are here, some of our biggest landowners in that area. This is ground zero. These are the most important business people that I know in that area that would give great feedback directly, like offline or indirectly through this process. And I would challenge as a developer, these are people you really need to talk to. I wish you the best of luck. I think you've got a large hurdle, but I really appreciate you coming, and I'm glad that we're doing this this way. Thank
Great.
you.
Well, listen, I appreciate the good items back and forth. I appreciate the community taking the time to come out and give us their input. And so we'll go ahead and put this to a vote. We have the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. We have 4-1, motion passes. Now we are going to be adjourning into closed session, so we'll go ahead and recess to closed session.
And the purpose of the closed session is public employee performance evaluation, position city manager, Government Code Section 54957.
Thank you. Click.